All right, so let's move on. Okay, one thing that I missed talking about is showing you frequency distributions. So I'll just, before we move on to the next chart, we'll just do frequency distribution, then I'll come to stacked bar. Okay, so suppose I have a lot of random numbers. Okay, so I'll say equal to band between 1 to 100. And if I have like many, so I have many of them. So these are all raw data for me, maybe scores, maybe whatever it is, some sort of a raw data. Now, what can you tell me about this data? What can you tell me about this data? Can you tell me anything about this data? You will realize it's extremely difficult to say anything about this data. If someone says describe this data, you will find it extremely difficult, very challenging to describe this data. So what are the various things that you can do? You can calculate minimum, you can calculate maximum, you can calculate average, right? So you say equal to min of the data, you say equal to max of the same data, right? You say equal to average of the same data. Okay. Some of you might even be interested in finding the mode. Some of you might be interested in finding the median. I'm not going to get into explaining what a mode and median does, just showing you because some people had said that we want to know, but explaining is a whole different thing. So that's not within the scope of this. So you can just have, so if you want to get only one mode, you can get mode.single in the newer ones, or if you don't have the newer Office editions, you just say equal to mode. You'll get one mode. So here 69 is one mode. There may be more than one mode. I do not know. I have only asked for one mode, so it has given me 69 as one mode. Equal to median. Again, I don't want to get into what and how, but for those of you who are interested. So this gives me some sort of information about the data, right? What else can give me more information about the data? Suppose I had these as 0 to, I know the numbers range between 1 to 100. Okay, so that's very, very clear to me. So I want to know 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 60 to 80, 80 to 100. And what I want to know is how many are between each of these ranges, like how many values here, how many total values, total count is 195, right? So out of 195, how many fall between 0 to 20, how many fall between 20 to 40, how many fall between 40 to 60, and so on. The numbers that count is what we call as frequency, right? So it's what is called as frequency. So all of these, when you add them up, they will add up to the total number, which is 195 in this particular case. Okay, so Excel can calculate this, but Excel cannot calculate it given this kind of range. So what we need to do is we need to split this range as 0 and 20. Okay, then 20 to 40, right? Then 40 to 60, then 60 to 80, then 80 to 100, right? So this is what these ranges are. Actually, Excel does not need, these are the lower limits and these are the upper limits. Excel actually does not need to know the lower limits at all. Okay, and why does Excel not need to know the lower limit at all? Because Excel can understand a few things immediately. One, between the two, there is always a difference of 20, right? So what should be the lower limit for this one, that should be 20 minus 20, which is 0. So it is able to calculate this directly. If this is 20, this also is 20. If this is 40, this is 40. If this is 60, this is 60. If this is 80, this is 80, right? So all of the information is contained within this itself. So Excel does not need to understand anything else, right? So if I want to get frequency, right? Frequency is again one of the formulas, which is an array formula, because it's the same function which will appear on multiple cells. So you will have to first select all of them plus one cell, and I'll tell you why you need to do plus one cell, right? Again, plus one cell is not mandatory. It's a good idea to do it, and I'll tell you why it's a good idea to do plus one. Okay, so you come here and you type equal to frequency. Okay, equal to frequency. Data is this entire, comma, you have to only give it what the upper limits are. Do not select the label, just give it the upper limits. Okay, and press Control Shift Enter. When you press Control Shift Enter, you will see curly brackets in that, and it will give you all of the frequencies and it will give you a 0. Okay. Now, what are the things that I can see? I can check quickly. So if I select all of these numbers, I see sum is 195, which is what was expected out of this, right? So count of all of these, this entire series is 195. So my sum was expected to be 195, and it actually is 195. Right? They are equal. So I know that this part is correct. Okay. Now the question is, why do I need to always have one extra? Why is it that I want to have one extra? Okay. Suppose you haven't done the entire due diligence by looking at the minimum and maximum. Okay. And you just believe that there is 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80. That's all. Okay. You believe that that is all that is there to it, right? So now, if you select only these three cells, then you will not get the value on the fourth cell. And I'll show you why value on the fourth cell is important. If I do this, now here you see it is giving me 0 to 20 is 37, 20 to 40 is 35, 40 to 60 is 40, 60 to 80 is 43, and above 80, there are 40 of them, right? If I did not select this cell, then I would have missed 40 of them which are above 80. Okay, that's the reason why it's a good idea to have that particular cell selected. We call that as the overflow bin. Overflow bin. The idea of overflow bin, exactly as the name says, the idea is to catch anything that is not caught in the frequencies given above. All right, so that really is what is the overflow bin. Okay, questions? No questions on this? All right, okay, great. So remember, just remember one thing, that this is an array formula. So you'll have to select all of them and enter the formula over here, and then press Control Shift and enter. Okay. Going back. All right, moving on to a stacked bar. A stacked bar is similar to multiple bar charts, but it has a lot more advantage, right? So here the advantage is it can show segments that contribute to a total. Okay, so not only is that an advantage, that also tells you with what kind of data should you be using stacked bar. You should be using a stack bar when your data has segments that contribute to totals, right? Only then you should be using stack bar, and I'll explain why and how that would work. So here, the uh, there are two possible ways. One is you can have the segments as numbers, or you can have the segments as percentages. I'll show you both of them. The good thing about it is that there can be a lot of information given in a stack bar. So think of it like this, that it can actually look just like how it is, say, for example, your multiple pie charts. It look like your multiple pie charts, right? So from that perspective, there's a lot of information that can be conveyed. And if there are too many segments, then this chart can be very confusing. So let's go back to Excel. Okay. All right. So let's have only 4 people, right? Let's have 4 people, and let's have subject, or maybe I have zone. I have east, west, north, and south. Okay. So this is item 1. I have item 2. I have item 3. Okay. So I have these. Maybe an item 4 as well. Now, selecting data, I have explained multiple times in maybe at least 2 or 3 of the previous sessions. You would find them in the recording. I've told you repeatedly that shift and arrow key will move, will select one by one. Control plus arrow key will move to the end. So if you press shift and control together, then you will be able to select and move quickly. Okay. I have mentioned this multiple times. Okay. Okay, so there's a question from Dr. M. Ponnambaleshwari asking if we take data like 1 to 19, 20 to 39, so which is discontinuous or discrete class intervals. Discrete class intervals you cannot do this way. Okay, you cannot do discrete class intervals with the frequency function. Frequency function can only work with continuous class intervals, right? Because you are only specifying the upper, so the assumption will always be continuous class interval. For discontinuous class intervals, then you will have to use a pivot table to do that. Okay, you cannot do that without a pivot table. I'll show you later. I also don't want to confuse too many people, but yeah, I will show this later. So let's just move on with the rest of it. Okay. Okay, so now we have this kind of a data. I'll select the entire data set, insert, right? And let's just move on to the next one, stacked column. Okay, so here there are 2 things which are being given at once. 2 kinds of information is being given at once, right? And here I'll also show you with swapping the rows and columns what happens, because this is a good example to take a look at that. The bar was not a very good example for that. So here, what are the 2 things that is showing together? One, it is telling you what about the total sales of item 1, 2, 3, and 4. Can you tell me which item is the most popularly sold item? At a glance, it's easy to say that item 2 is the most popularly sold item. Isn't it? That's very, very easy to say. So not only is that information coming across very, very quickly, what else is coming across? So item 2, where did it sell the most? It sold the most in South, right? Where did item 3 sell the least? Item 3 sold the least in West. Correct? So there are 2 kinds of information coming in. So here, what does the total height of the column indicate? The height of the column indicates if I were to have a sum here. Right? If I were to have a sum here, okay, These values 214, 326, 195, and 253, these values are indicated by the height of the column. So the first column, I1, height is a little above 200, the height is 214. Second is 326, little above 300, 326. The third one, little below 200. Fourth one, little above 250, right? And along with that, it's also showing me what is the percentage of each one of them. What is the share of each one of them? So if I were to say, what is the single most popular item in South Zone, right? So you look at all of the yellow ones and you see the single most popular item is item 2. What is the single most popular item in West Zone? So you look at all of the oranges, orange bars, and you say the single most popular item in West Zone is item 1, right? So two kinds of information is conveyed. So this is one type of stacked column chart that's possible. There is yet another kind of stacked column chart which is possible, and that is 100% stacked column. Okay, so this also gives me the same information as the previous one. It gives me the same information as the previous one. Only thing is here, the information that I have lost is the total. Okay, I have lost the information of total because all of them have been normalized to 100%, right? So now, does it tell you which item is the most popular item? It does not tell you which item is most popular. Does it tell you which item is the most popular item in South Zone? It does, right? It continues to tell you that item 2 is the most popular item in South Zone, or item 1 is the most popular item in the West Zone. Okay, so that information is there, but the overall total, this information is no longer available. Suppose, in what kind of situation do you want to use either of these two charts? Okay, here, if you look at it, they are more or less similar. Or maybe if you are the business user, maybe these values are as expected, right? But suppose the values were not as expected. Right? Suppose the values were not as expected, right? How do I tell that item 4 is a new product and has sold very minimally compared to the other items? I do it with this kind of chart that shows total, right? Now, remember, because I'm normalizing all of them to 100, you see the segments as percentages, that chart continues to have it as tall, and therefore this chart is misleading. If you look at this percentage chart over here, wouldn't you get the impression that in South Zone, speaking about South Zone, I2 and I4 are selling the same? Is that not what is the impression that you get? Could anything be further from the truth? In South Zone, item 2 is selling 98 and item 4 is selling 7. That information is lost in percentage, right? So as practitioners of data, it is important that you are cognizant of these kind of pitfalls and you avoid using data that could be misleading, right? So if you have to show data like this, then you would not use the percentage kind of chart. You would rather use the total kind of chart. Okay, clear? So now let's just take a look at what are the options available over here. Let me switch row column, right? If I switch row column, instead of the items, now the zones are at the bottom. This is also a good view to look at. Earlier, what was it? It was item 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom. So therefore, item 4 was always a very small one. Here it says items are as segments, and at the bottom on the x-axis, you have the zones. So now item 4 gets a very thin slice on all of them, right? If you want to look at by item or if you look at by zone. Now here, what is your height of the bar telling you? The height of the bar here is telling you that you are getting the total of the zone this way. Okay, so this 179 is what is coming for east, a little between 150 and 200. Now, suppose you've created a chart like this, but you want to create the other kind of chart, right? You want to create that 100% stacked. Okay, you've already created. What do? Should you delete? You don't have to delete. You just select this, go to chart design and go to change chart type. Okay, go to change chart type. Now from here, you see you are getting the 100% stacked also, right? You are getting the 100% stacked also with two different styles possible. Select and it's changed. Again, you can change still further. You say you want a 3D kind of look. Fair enough. Get that, right? Again, in the modern styling, 3D has sort of gone out of favor. So we tend to not use these 3D. They look very old fashioned. They, to my mind, they sort of look like 1990s. So wouldn't recommend using this if you are able to avoid. So just try and avoid. Okay. But of course, if it's a personal preference thing. If any of you prefer and if you think it suits your context, by all means, go ahead and use that.